All right. So you want to be a GM. You're kind of new at this. You've sat at a table and you've played for months, weeks, years, and you've never actually sat in the hot seat and been the coordinator, the facilitator, the presenter to whatever your group needs, your requirements are. So what you don't see is a whole lot of advice and help for you out here on YouTube, ironically, right? Go. So, one of those things that I learned early on in my long history of being a dungeon master, game master, slash whatever the hell it is y'all want it to be, is to keep notes, prodigious notes. Sometimes better, the more the better, but not always works out that way. I do two ways. One is I always have a notepad handy, and I'll mark the top of the page the session number and the real date whenever I can remember to do that. And there'll be stacks of these things and other folders and things like this. I've got more up here. And I do this so while we're in game, and if something pertinent, interesting, or a possible segue occurs, I make a little notation to myself, just enough to remind myself what it was that I think I saw or I think I want to remember. And then after the fact, after the game, I go back to my notes. And that's when I pull out a journal book, which I don't currently have any handy. I have three or four out there on my shelf. And you pull those out and you go back to your brief notes and you introduce as detailed as possible, as detailed as you want, in my opinion. And you do this over and over again. Over time, you start to develop patterns, and you can start to see things that work and some things that don't work. Another thing is it allows you to refresh your memory, because one of the challenges of being a GM is keeping track of the actual timeline in game. And we make the argument that we're not really overly concerned about time because we do a lot of leapfrogging around. Nobody does one to one campaigns. I have ran a couple, and they can be very daunting. Just trying to travel from one place to another where you're doing 1 minute to 1 minute is really kind of impractical. Those only work well if you have magical means or mechanical means that will assist your travel time. Otherwise, it just bogs down in a drudgery that nobody really finds, appealing after a minute, in my experience, right? But notes are your friends. A log is your friend. And what might be interesting in my experiences. I've learned to notate things down, not just what the characters do, but what the non-player characters do as well. And if I introduce anything like a place name or a site name or thing like this, so then when I go back to do my updated journal, I can then go back to my maps and my other places and update those as well. So now we have a name to that shopkeeper, a name to that little thorp that we saw over the hill, and then suddenly had a reason to find more about that kind of stuff. And it helps build the sandbox, but it helps build a continuity. So you don't get yourself. This is a dangerous trap for a GM. Uh, you can get yourself so enamored or so entrenched in what's going on that you forget that there's a larger picture going on off off stage, off the table. That's part of your job as the game master, is to consider the possibilities of what's going on off camera. So the actions and consequences of that the player characters are involved in or create or sponsor or spin off ought to be accounted for at some point. Just my opinion. Anyway, once again, if you're going to be a new DM, a new game master, if you really want to get good at it over time, notes. Take lots of notes. Learn a system for taking notes of some sort. It's worth doing so, just from experience. Till next time, I'm me, you're not. Gray and white mama there sitting back here. We got a little heat pad I brought out, which was out in an old cat box they had outside, but we haven't had any stray cats around the house in over a year, so we just brought the heater pad in and repurposed it for her to lay on. It's a little chilly in this room compared to the rest of the house.